Tonight's Experience Delaware, we visit the Montmorency staircase at the Winterthur Museum in Wilmington. Henry F. DuPont searched for just the right staircase. He found it in North Carolina and brought it home in 1935. Then, using the latest steel-making technology, he transformed it into a marvel of 20th century design.
The backstory of the Winterthur staircase is really fascinating. First of all, it's one of the only objects that DuPont searched for. Most of the time he saw an object and then he found a place for it at Winterthur. This is different. For the Montmorency staircase, he searched for the right staircase for about 2 years. So they finally found what they were looking for in Chaco Springs, North Carolina. It was a house built in 1822 by General William Williams, but they brought it back to Winterthur piece by piece in many truckloads. I think the most interesting thing about the installation, it was all done in secret. He took his wife and his family on a 5-month world tour, and while they were gone, they had this staircase installed here. It's a masterpiece of American design, 19th century American design as well as 20th century American design. I think it's one of the best examples of H.F. DuPont's art, taking the past and bringing it into the present. The staircase is kind of quirky. As with a lot of pieces of great design, it's not necessarily the most usable staircase. The construction workers warned him that the staircase treads are dangerous. And so we don't let people go up and down that staircase today, although it's perfectly strong.
Here they use steel as the substrate, so that is what's supporting it, is a freestanding staircase. That is what makes it very special. And then clad it in the original wood. This is not a molding machine, this has to be hand carved. When Mr. DuPont purchased this staircase and brought it here, he was positioning himself to replace an existing marble staircase, end floor and surround. It was quite a project. To dismantle the marble floor, all that went into the original staircase, that had to happen first before this staircase could be installed. So that engineering of demolition was significant in its own right. Every 10th baluster is steel. You would never know that, but it's how we keep it strong.
And I think you can see DuPont's art in this entire room. It's not just the staircase, but as you look around, you'll see that ellipse of the staircase repeated throughout the room. You can see it in the settee, you can see it in the oval on the urns, you can see it in the oval niches. It turned into, for the DuPont family in a very personal way, a major part of their life. They would walk up the stairs to their bedroom. We have photographs of the daughters getting married here and throwing her bouquet. If you had to pick out one object to represent Winterthur, I think this staircase might be it. It is an icon of the museum.
The construction, which included adding another story to the original staircase, took 4 months to complete and included dozens of craftsmen working around the clock. Now only authorized personnel are allowed to walk on the staircase for maintenance and inspection purposes. A local photographer is working on a book documenting the disappearing farms of Delaware. Kathleen Buckaloo started the project 4 years ago and has spoken to almost 100 farmers about the challenges they face every day. Experience Delaware caught up with her in Odessa.
I started photographing farmers because I kept seeing them disappearing. You'd see a curb cut going into a cornfield, and you knew it wasn't going to be a cornfield much longer. This is Ernie Vogel, who's a dairy farmer in Harrington. I've tried to find as many different types of farmers in Delaware as I could. So I have the traditional ones of poultry, dairy, vegetables, fruit, grain. I didn't know we had buffalo or beef cattle or emus. Different organic farms, a woman who does biodynamic down in Del Mar, guy who's doing organic chickens and eggs. I got a couple of Amish farmers. I have a horticultural list. So trying to get a really wide range of people and types of farms. Hey, Jack! Jack Coleman grew up on this farm. His dad started planting just a couple of the trees just to diversify, just have something else. And he said they were gone in no time.
And then in '75, I took it over and started farming.
And sometimes what I'd like to do is really show the farm and the encroaching development. So I'm going to include those houses back there. What surprised me the most was how much they know and how much they have to know. They have to know, be a mechanic, they have to understand their computer, they have to understand the Chicago Board of Trade and how it impacts their what they're doing. So very forward-thinking in how they plan. The farmers are very conscious of the rest of the population not knowing who they are, not understanding what they do. And they said, but how could they understand what would they do? They don't even know where their food comes from. This is Fred Bennett II. He was the one that asked me if I worked for the government. There's also a level of spirituality to their work. You have to have faith. You're putting this little tiny seed into the ground and you're covering up, and you have to have faith that it's going to grow into something that's going to feed somebody. They all work very, very hard at what they do. They are incredibly proud of what they do and the fact that they provide food for people. And to them, it's a very much it's an honest way of making a living. I've made the comparison of artists and farmers to people that they're very much the same kind of people. You both work really, really hard at what you do. You rarely get paid what it's worth. People don't understand what it is you do. You often have to have another job to pay for what it is you do, or have somebody else in your household have another job. There's some God element or spirituality or energy to what you do. And then when I ask them, why do you keep doing it day after day? What keeps you going? Their answers are exactly the same. Well, I have to. It's in my bones. It's in my blood. It's what I do because I love it.
And for more information about Kathleen Buckelew or to view more farm photos, visit her website at buckalewphotography.com. A hardware store in Seaford has surpassed what many retail establishments only dream of. Burton's Brothers Hardware has been in business for more than 100 years. You'll find an antique cash register and the original plank floors. Experienced Delaware caught up with Ron Marvel, who runs the Seaford landmark, with his brother Rick.
Burton Brothers was established, the best we can tell, in 1893 by the Burton family. I tell everybody right now we're about halftime. The Burtons owned it halftime. We've owned it about halftime. We're probably one of the first GE appliance dealers in the nation that's left in business today. We know that we've had GE appliances probably since 1928. We were put on the National Register not because of the inside, but because of the outside of the structure. The tin on the front of the building is what really made it unique. This is our store in the 50s. This is an invoice from 1918. This is the stuff that they bought, handwritten, and how much it was. Some of the pictures we've got show horse and buggy sitting out front of the store. You know, and if you kind of close your eyes, you can get the vision that you are back in that time. I've got wringer washers over there that I can show you. It's amazing when you talk to the people that are elderly, they say, I've used those type washers, because those washers were used up till the 60s. Over the years, a lot of our store fixtures and items that haven't sold, and we've just put them upstairs out of the way, and we've never sold them.
It's managed to make
So
it
as people have become more nostalgic over time, we've kind of drug those things out and put them on a little bit of display up there. That's one of the first scanners that was ever made. When somebody used to come in, you know, if the sale was $5.45, you would push that in and push your letter and bring it, and the drawer would come out and you would make your change in the drawer. This is a very antique octagonal bolt bin. Nuts and bolts were kept in that. My grandfather was very frugal, and he would bring it up here thinking he had the opportunity to sell it sometime. We have people that come to this store just to come see the store in the manner in which it is, and then when they come in here, they'll stand here and walk around and look at, you know, the things that we have in the store and the way it's set up and the fixtures. And it's sort of like a museum. We have a lot of old things in here that we've kept and maintained, so you know, you can spend an hour in here or two just walking around looking at the things that we've got. When people walk in and if they're older people, they make the exact comment is, I remember a hardware store like this when I was a kid. The younger people, and sometimes they're in amazement, but as time goes on, they'll learn to appreciate it more maybe. This is like what it was. This is not a movie. Nobody's redone this. It is what it is.
Marvel often gives tours of the store to local school kids and says the key to the business's success and longevity is the attention to detail and, of course, customer service. In tonight's Experience Delaware, we meet a Wilmington man whose hobby not only gives him a creative outlet, but it's also a way to give back to the environment. 79-year-old Tom Mumper is a wood turner. He's made more than 4,000 carved pieces from tree trunks, and he's showing no signs of slowing down.
This plywood disc on here is how I cut a circle on the outside of a log. I had an opportunity to get into wood turning, and I've just become addicted to it. It's a wonderful hobby. I can look at a tree and see what's in it, and I don't just fool with any kind of wood. I know enough about different kinds of wood now that I select the wood that has a good color, a good grain, a good figure in it, and the shape is something special. Three basic tools that I use. One is a bowl gouge, and one is a scraper, and the other is a parting tool. And that's about all I use. I have in my collection here probably 10 or 12 different kinds of tools, but these are all I need. The object is to try to keep that heel on the wood when you come around. I've been working with wood and with the wood turning for something over 20 years now. It is exciting when I can look at a tree, and it's a gift. It's something you can't teach. And I can see the piece in the tree. And my specialty is natural edge pieces. That's where the outside of the tree, the bark, becomes the upper edge of the bowl. This certainly didn't happen in the first year or two. Even now, I'm still doing things and creating stuff that's very satisfying. At this point in time, I've turned over 4,000 pieces, and I'm still coming up with new shapes. I don't have a favorite piece. The favorite piece probably is the next one I make. So I'm staying with the wood turning because I understand it. I like what I'm doing now. And at this age, I hope I can keep it up for a long time.
Tom actually has muscular dystrophy and arthritis in his hands, but he believes without his wood turning, his condition would be much worse. By the way, Tom's wood supply all comes from local trees. Many families will be heading to the Delaware beaches this weekend, hoping for some fun in the sun. For most kids, that means playing in the sand with the pails and shovels for hours at a time. In tonight's Experience Delaware, we visit a Rehoboth Beach Museum exhibit that celebrates summer memories through a unique collection of vintage sand pails.
The history of sand pails really goes back to before the Civil War. People would go to the beach, but most of them were wooden sand pails at the time. But as the 1870s rolled around, the 1880s, kind of the Victorian period began, and things started to be made out of tin. Some of them in the early 1900s were towns that were beach towns. They had patriotic themes or themes about history, and those are probably the most valuable ones. The Victorian sand pails have an image stamped on them, and some of them are embossed, so they're a little bit raised. We picked out about 125 sand pails, about 30 different shovels, some sand sifters, some of the old tin wind-up boats, some of the old tin wind-up fish, and so it's a sampling of them. This is probably less than half my collection. There's one section that's probably all just foreign sand pails that came from England, they came from France, they came from mostly European countries, and those are kind of ones that to me are special. And on the front of it you can see King George and Queen Mary. So we know that that sand pail is from 1935. One of my favorite things, there's not really a lot of them out here. If you could envision the bottom base, you'd fill that full of water, and then you'd pump the handle, and that would force the water up. It was just kind of a pump that probably kept kids entertained for hours at a time. Then we really kind of came down to some of those good old ones that probably we remember as a kid from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the ones with the circus theme or some of the Disney ones. And those are kind of the ones we just wanted to have because they really just brought back plain happy memories of being at the beach.
I will tell you, the reaction we get when people walk around the corner and come in and see all of the sand pails hanging is just fantastic. All of a sudden people are transported back to their childhoods, and we've had people come in and point at a couple of the sand pails and say, I had one just like that when I was a kid. But I never really even dreamed of the incredible variety of sand pails over the course of time, from the late 1800s right on up through the 1960s. Anything you can imagine that would have been put on a sand pail has been put on a sand pail.
My kids just have the plastic bucket today. The vintage sand pail collection now on display includes 125 pieces, but Smith's collection tops out at around 400 sand pails. The exhibit at the Rehoboth Beach Museum runs through April 2010, so you still have plenty of time to check it out. A couple from Millsboro is getting creative when it comes to going green. Judy and Lou Hagan make art from recycled metal. Everything from old Army helmets to shock absorbers get turned into flowers, giraffes, and praying mantises. They got the idea after seeing the sculpture down south, and they decided they could do better.
I like the idea that we're recycling. We're giving the metal a second design. I was once told a hammer can be more than just a hammer, you know, if you think of it differently. The thing I also like to do when we're making a piece is use parts that all people can associate with. Women can look at the irises and say, well, that's a serving spoon, or that's a little spade, and a man can look at it and say, well, that's a spark plug in the middle. Sometimes when people drop things off, I know right away what they're going to be. Other times, I might have to sit them around, and then all of a sudden, maybe it's laying an oddball way, and it's like, ah, yeah.
Little bumperettes, 64 Volkswagen. And this piece becomes this guy when he's done.
My husband Lou was cutting up some farm equipment, and he was throwing them on a pile. And the way the one piece landed, I says, oh my gosh, that's a flamingo body. Some of the things that are fun to work with and you really get inspired with are the shape of old bicycles, old farm things that have just unusual curves to them and angles. They talk to you. And then you get excited. It's like, wow, what can I use now for this? You know, what kind of legs can I make? What does their head look like?
Be a wacky duck, just a fun piece. Made out of it's an Army helmet, smashed together. Truck exhaust pipe, bicycle frame. The feet are a wavy disc, one of these cut apart that the farmers use down here. And the base is a big regular disc. And it gets a skirt around it, a fun hat and a paint job.
I had a couple stop in on Saturday from New Jersey. They were simply driving by, did a U-turn and come back. They were just blown away. They just had to have something. And they left with a dragonfly. And then when they realized that this part was made from recycled metals, you know, things that were before items, that even made it more fun to them. And they'll be back.
Judy and Lou have no formal art training and say they just make what looks and feels right. If you'd like to see more, you can go to secondtimedesigns.com.
This is the most I've looked at it since we've been married.
Robert and Heather Lieberman are newlyweds and grateful that they can enjoy their wedding album. Because of Robert's bout with severe sepsis, this 27-year-old attorney almost didn't make it to his first anniversary.
An orderly had told me, wow, I'm surprised, you know, you're doing as well as you are right now. I had no idea. And at that point, I had no idea I was as sick as I was. And at that point, I started to ask questions saying, you know, how sick was I?
Pretty sick. At one point, he scribbled notes to a doctor asking if he was going to die. Meanwhile, his new bride was thinking the same thing.
I was convinced he was going to die, and I was going to have to bury my 27-year-old husband after being married for 10 months.
Sepsis is the body's reaction to an overwhelming infection of the blood. It produces certain chemicals and proteins that cause blood vessels to leak.
This can lead to low blood pressure and low blood flow to the major organs of the body, such as the kidney or the liver, the brain, the heart, and produces damage to these organs and thus lead to death.
In Robert's case, the sepsis was brought on by a staph infection, so doctors put him on a new drug called Zygris.
It's made up of a protein which seems to counteract a lot of the body's detrimental reaction to the infection.
Within, I believe, 3 or 4 days of receiving Zygris, I had started to feel better.
Robert feels fine now and realizes the experience has brought him and his family closer. This has been Sherry reporting.
My chesters, I need to sit up.
Meet Samantha, a virtual patient that's helping train future cardiologists.
We can simulate any type of heart attack that we want to, and we can simulate any complication.
It allows physicians in training to practice high-risk situations and highly technical procedures on a mannequin, on a virtual mannequin.
Virtually forcing the trainee to think fast.
Hemodynamic collapse, falling blood pressures, irregular heart rhythms, which can be lethal, incredibly low blood sugars. So it is like the real-life type of situation where you have to react quickly and manage the situation.
I'm not sure, but I think my blood sugar may be low.
Just like a real patient, Samantha can offer a variety of complaints.
There is a virtual voice that will come out and say, I'm feeling very tired, or I'm feeling dizzy, or I'm having extra chest pain, and you have to react to that scenario.
Doctors can even administer virtual medication.
That feels better.
The Sim Suite will never replace real-life practice, but act more as a precursor of what's to come. It's also meant to do more than just train rookie physicians.
It's open for anyone who wants to come back and practice complex skills.
Skills that will one day save a life. This is Ann Alexander reporting.
Mary Beth McGonigal is the busy mom of a 9-month-old, but not too long ago, this 23-year-old wondered if she'd ever be a mother.
The only thing that was going through my head was, am I going to live? Will Asher live? You know, because I was never faced with anything so odd.
7-month pregnant Mary Beth was faced with a stroke caused by a blood clot in her brain. Then doctors discovered she had a hole in her heart.
The hole in the septum is right here.
Doctors implanted a device called a CardioSeal.
The CardioSeal is one of many devices in the market that essentially plugs the hole in the heart.
The CardioSeal, which resembles a tiny double umbrella, is threaded through a vein up to the heart using a catheter.
We open the one side, we pull the device back, and we open the other side, and then we release the device.
In Mary Beth's case, everything went smoothly, and little Asher arrived healthy, exactly on his due date. But being the first pregnant woman to have the CardioSeal procedure brought some pressure with it.
That was added stress, not knowing, is this going to be good or is this going to be, you know, a problem?
Mary Beth says she's 98% back to normal, but does have some nerve damage from the stroke. She hopes physical therapy will put her completely back on track in a heartbeat. This has been Sherry reporting. "37-year-old Maureen Gallagher has been modeling for about half her life, but as she aged, she says she was beginning to look tired.
After a certain amount of hours, my face just couldn't stay up and fresh looking.
Maureen wanted to freshen her look without really changing it.
I didn't want to look pulled. That's the problem, and I didn't want the shape of my eyes to change. I didn't want to look like someone else.
So Maureen opted for a mid-facelift, where doctors make a hairline incision and tissue is lifted from the inside of the skin. This can be done alone or together with a full facelift.
This mid-face fat always needs to be repositioned in order to rejuvenate the mid-face. It's taking the fat, which is down here, falling down between the nose and the lip, and bringing it back up to the cheekbone.
Surgery usually takes about an hour, and patients feel tightness and a bit swollen. Dr. Omida points out that the whole healing process takes anywhere from 12 to 16 weeks.
I felt that the most important thing we could do for her at this stage was to go ahead and get her mid-facial fat, which had sagged, back to where it was 10 years ago, and therefore completely rejuvenate the cheekbone and the inferior portion of the lower lid.
Maureen says she's certain the procedure will not only enhance but prolong her career.
I would be pretty much over soon if I didn't do something that's going to keep me looking fresh for 12 hours.
It'll not only keep her looking fresh, but picture perfect too. This has been Sherry reporting.
Having a heart attack was the last thing on 41-year-old Ivy Fairchild's mind.
I was sweating bullets, really a bad case of the cold sweats. I was very disoriented, and I had no sensation in my left hand or my left arm.
She also had severe chest pain and felt nauseous.
I called my best friend and I said, could you go on the internet and check?
The symptoms of heartburn and a heart attack are similar. Ivy made a common mistake: denial.
Even once patients do admit to themselves that something is seriously wrong, there very often is a hesitation to alert a loved one or call 911 or call their physician.
The signs of a heart attack differ for men and women. In females, symptoms include nausea, feeling out of breath, dizziness, and cold sweats. For men, suffering a heart attack usually means tightness and pain in the chest, coupled with trouble breathing or a sudden feeling of fullness. For both sexes, pain will sometimes spread to the shoulders, neck, jaw, or arms. Heartburn is a different story.
Classically, it begins in the upper abdomen.
With heartburn, a person will usually feel a burning sensation after eating, or experience chest pain when bending over or lying down.
Even though the problem is in the stomach and esophagus, it doesn't have anything to do with the heart and lungs, it can create some very confusing symptoms for patients.
Gastroesophageal reflux disease, or GERD, is another condition that adds to the confusion. It's caused when stomach acid backs up into the esophagus. Symptoms include longer than usual heartburn or difficulty swallowing. Despite the warning signs, Ivy went on with her life, assuming she had heartburn.
I had caffeine. I had 2 cans of Pepsi, trying to make myself burp. The next day, I went to a concert and danced in the aisles.
Ivy should have danced right to the ER.
The sooner we can diagnose the problem and help to restore blood flow to the heart, the smaller the heart attack is likely to be.
Ivy had a heart attack but is on the road to recovery. On the way, she learned an important lesson.
If a woman is experiencing dizziness, loss of sensation in your left arm or your left leg, if you're disoriented and running cold sweats, regardless of your age, you should really take notice.
Heartfelt advice from someone who knows firsthand. This has been Sherry reporting.
Pretty funny, boy. He should be a comedian.
Actually, I am a comedian. Yes, he's a comedian. But how did Jerry Seinfeld make it big? Comedian Paul Solari knows the answer and has some advice for anyone with comic aspirations.
I think deep down inside, people look at the life of a stand-up comedian and go, man, you know, I could do that. I could definitely do that. And I think they find out that it's not as easy as it looks.
Next thing you know, you're saying they should have their own schools. They do have their own schools.
Let them laugh. If you don't get a response, just move on.
Solari runs a comedy workshop through Wickline Casting here in Philadelphia. The 8-week course teaches anyone who's interested how to, well, be funny.
A lot of comedians would say you can't teach someone to be a comedian. And I would say that may be true to a point, to a very small point. Everyone was born with a personality. And everyone was born with a fantastic sense of humor.
Meet his students.
I'm taking this class because I'm 5 months pregnant, I have this business, I married this man from Israel, he doesn't speak English. I figure I need a little humor about it. You have to laugh at yourself, and other people will laugh with you.
The course also stresses a very important part of a stand-up's routine, timing.
Remember that you have a setup. That setup should be short. Some of your punchlines are great here.
Dalen Leach took the class for a variety of reasons.
Chicks, chicks, chicks.
But seriously, folks, Leach, who practices law and has dabbled in stand-up comedy before, says the course helped him sharpen his skills.
There's a lot of little mistakes you make if you're not really well trained, and it helped me work out a lot of the kinks and a lot of the things that I was doing wrong.
It's been said that all lawyers are frustrated performers. Lawyer Fran Kaysen has always had that itch to do stand-up.
I have to tell you, all the top designers will tell you that black is slimming. Well, I wore black for 7 months straight, and I didn't lose a pound.
This is something I've always wanted to do my whole life. I didn't know there was even such a class.
Some of these aspiring comics took the course for self-improvement, but Fran has dreams of making it big in show business.
I'm in show business?
Oh, come on!
Knowing how good it feels when you get people laughing, I can see that it could be very addicting.
But Solari warns that comedy can be a rocky road. The first 15 years are the toughest, but this class also offers something to those who aren't eager to make 15 years of sacrifice.
It's a workshop to empower you with the belief that you try anything and you can do it.
Call it better living through comedy. George Mallet, Fox News. Heat was on for 5 student comedians performing on Saturday night at Bonkers Comedy Cafe in Media. It was their big debut and graduation after completing a stand-up comedy workshop.
I have been looking forward to this for a while, and I'm just getting nerves now because people are starting to come, and I'm realizing I'm really going to do it.
But performing her routine in front of a live audience almost didn't happen for Noelle Day. She reconsidered after getting some words of encouragement from instructor Paul Solari.
I feel really good. I feel much more ready to conquer anything than I was before I started the class. Well, I'm new on the comedy scene. Yeah, I figured why not give it a try since my modeling career is in a slump. Yeah, I don't know why that swimsuit pictorial didn't go over better. Maybe it was the way I did my hair.
As in any live event, things don't always go as planned. Fran Kaysen ran into some unexpected snags as she began her routine, but she made the best of it.
This was the first week's lesson. I wasn't there.
You would think Connie Shazar, who dabbles in the hair replacement business and is pregnant, would get much of her material from those slices of life, but she relies on her husband.
But I love my husband. I even have a mug that says I love my husband. Of course, his mug says it's only adultery to get caught.
As an attorney, Dalen Leach is accustomed to being in the spotlight. He wasn't at all nervous about performing, but did have other things on his mind.
I always had a question about these, like, anything goes type of ads. I mean, is this sort of like a date? I mean, if I answer an ad to come over and tie you to a cement mixer, am I expected to bring flowers?
The best date I ever had was Ruth, a homeless girl. It was great. I would pick her up, we go out to eat, go see a movie, whatever. Then, at the end of the night, I'd just drop her off anywhere.
After a night of laughter, the students received some much-deserved recognition, those coveted diplomas.
I'm glad it's over, but I'm kind of not. I like the laughter. It was great.
This is pretty much as good as sex.
I'm going right to Letterman.
Congratulations to these students, helping make the world a better place through laughter.
At this point, I'm imitating the machine, hoping to fool the checker. He's going like this, I'm going beep, beep.
George Mallet, Fox News.